Alright, it's Ed Ball here. What I learned in the streets and in prison that can help you win at the game of life. And we are picking up in section 2 of my book. And we're going to start with chapter 16. And this chapter is called Game, Recognize, Game. Kind of a precursor to this section. So people come up with scams and schemes all the time designed to separate you from what's valuable to you, whether it's your name, your social security number, whether it's your bank account, your money, whatever of value that they can separate you from. They have come up with schemes and scams to do it. And when we talk about recognizing game, we are talking about what can you do to keep from experiencing total harm or just experiencing some harm. And you do that by recognizing recognizing game. So once you recognize game, it helps you avoid being fully impacted by a scam, and or it can help you mitigate some of the damage that scammers wish to lay upon you. All right, so when we talk about recognition of game and avoidance of total harm or just some harm, some things that you can do is you can do your due diligence. So you can ask questions. You can get a better understanding of what's going on, and then at some point you're going to have to use logic, start putting two and two together. You might have to talk to previous victims or previous people who have dealt with this person, organization, or whatever, or whoever it is that you may be thinking about doing business with. And you might be an experienced scammer yourself, or you might know an experienced scammer, and then you can talk to them or use your own body of experience to determine whether this is a scam or on the up and up. And another tool that you have at your disposal is common sense. Sometimes people do things and say things that really doesn't even make any sense if you sit down and take your time to think about it. And cynicism can work for you sometimes, but you have to be careful with cynicism, being a cynic, because you might think that everybody and everything is a scam and is out to get you. So you have to use cynicism carefully. You have to use cynicism in league with due diligence. You have to ask questions, and if you are skeptic or cynic, ask more questions to try and get a total understanding of what's going on. All right, so another way you may recognize or avoid a scam or scheme is you may have been a victim yourself, and you can use that experience and what you learn to avoid and help other people avoid being schemed or scammed. But it takes time to sit down and just make sense of actually what happened to you, and you have to be honest, and you have to you have to make sense of what actually went down. All right, so how do you mitigate So what we just talked about is how do you avoid becoming a victim of a scam or a scheme. So now we're going to talk about how do you mitigate becoming a victim of a scam or a scheme. So pretty much the same thing. You do due diligence, but now in some cases due diligence isn't going to keep you from being a total victim. It might mitigate it because there's this thing called bounded rationality, and bounded rationality basically means that we don't have the time, the mental capacity, all of the information and various things to make the most optimal decision. So despite whatever information that you do have, is probably not all of the information. Despite your capabilities to make sense of all the information, it's probably not the best capabilities. So in essence, we don't have the time, brain power, all the information, everything to make the best decisions that we can when we're talking about schemes and scams. So we might make a good decision and mitigate some of the negative outcomes of a scheme or a scam. Now, when we talk about due diligence, you might take your time out to talk to previous victims, but circumstances vary. Your circumstance may be different from that victim, and as a result, you may incur some loss. So, I guess some loss is better than total loss. Losing some money in your bank account is better than losing your entire retirement. All right. So another way to mitigate the damage of a scheme or a scam is falling back on, if you were a victim, falling back on what happened to you or what happened to another victim. So you might talk to you might try to understand what happened to you or somebody else, but in our mind we get to thinking that we are special, or this circumstance is special, and we might move forward in a certain manner that still renders us a victim, but just not a victim suffering total loss. And you can utilize your gut to mitigate loss from a scam or a scheme, but I don't know, I think it's human nature that we think people are like us. We think people think like us. We think people will behave like us. We think people will do the things that we do. But a lot of people out here, man, to put it bluntly, gives no fuck, and they will do a whole bunch of treacherous things. So sometimes you have to use your gut in a manner that may go against your belief in people are like us, all man is created equal, and all that type of stuff. So you might have to go against that to at least mitigate your loss. All right, so a quick recap of game, recognizing game. The main takeaway is basically do your due diligence. Ask questions. Get all the information that you can, despite bounded rationality or whatever. Ask questions. Get a complete understanding of what's going on. And to me, if something is too complicated to understand, even after sitting down and thinking about it, asking questions, pondering, doing research, if stuff still is too complicated to understand and doesn't make sense, then I would move on because it's likely a scam or a scheme. All right. So this is Ed Ball. We just got through with chapter 16 with game, recognize game of the book. what I learned in the streets and in prison.